Last week, a new documentary came out about Bitcoin called Money Electric, the Bitcoin Mystery. And it's out on HBO Max, which means you can stream it on Max, max.com, which is HBO's streaming service. And I think it's the highest budget, most professionally produced documentary about Bitcoin that has ever been released. I was super impressed. I watched the whole thing with my family the day after it came out last week. It came out Tuesday night of last week. We watched the whole thing on Wednesday morning. And anyway, so I wanted to share my thoughts. I'm going to attempt to avoid spoilers, but it is really a fantastic documentary. So if you love Bitcoin content and you just really enjoy sort of keeping up with Bitcoin and watching just really well done, well produced, really well done content, then I would say stop this video and go watch it, and do not watch the rest of this video until you have seen it. And then you can come back and watch this video. But the reason I'm going to share all my thoughts now, and again, I'm going to avoid specific spoilers, but that doesn't mean, you know, some of what I say won't come across slightly spoiler-ish. So if you want to avoid that entirely, or the risk of it, please just watch it and don't watch any more of that. Okay, with that massive spoiler alert, here's my thoughts. So one, the documentary is extremely well done. I'm super impressed. Ultra professional. Just, it's really, really well done. The producer put a ton of work into trying to put, explain Bitcoin, explain the elements of Bitcoin, how it works, just trying to explain all of it in a very simple, easy to understand and accessible manner. And so the first half of the documentary is mostly about Bitcoin, and then by the end of the documentary, the documentary purports to unmask the actual real identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin. So here's my thoughts. One, again, I'm not going to say who they claim that is. I'm just going to provide some thoughts. So one, does the documentary make a compelling case for the individual that they identify being Satoshi? Yes, they do a compelling case, and they come up with evidence that I have never seen and I've never heard before. So, good job on that front. So, if you watch the documentary with no other outside influence, just in a vacuum, I think the average person would watch it and say they are 90% certain that the person identified as Satoshi Nakamoto in the documentary is the real inventor of Bitcoin. I think if the average person watched it in a vacuum, probably 90% probability that that's the conclusion that you would draw if you had not spent a ton of hours trying to figure out who Satoshi Nakamoto actually is anyway. Well, I happen to have spent hundreds of hours figuring out, or attempting to figure out who Satoshi Nakamoto is. So here's the challenge. The challenge is there's between 5 and 10 different people that could be Satoshi. And if you attempted to build a very compelling case or a documentary, you could build a very compelling case and documentary about each of them. And so it is possible to build, I think, a documentary that is very compelling that would leave the average person saying at the end of it, they're 90% certain the documentary is accurate. I think it's possible to build that documentary on potentially between 5 and at least 7, 5 to 7, maybe as many as 10 people. But let's say 5 to 7. There's at least 5 to 7 people you could build a really compelling case that they are Satoshi. And 1 or 2 of those people, I think you can build an even more compelling case that they are Satoshi than the actual person identified in this documentary. In this case, again, to avoid spoilers, I won't tell you, more about that specifically. But I wanted to add that I think in addition to all of that, you could build an incredibly compelling documentary making the case that none of the people that we are aware of that might be Satoshi Nakamoto actually are. So in short, there are at least 5 to 7, if not more, people that you could build a very compelling case are Satoshi Nakamoto, but you could build an incredibly strong case that none of them are Satoshi Nakamoto, and that Satoshi Nakamoto is a reclusive computer scientist who's never been identified and is only known by their online pseudonym, and we will never know their identity. So does the documentary mean we know who Satoshi is? Maybe, but maybe it's one of the other 5 to 7 people that other, news organizations have thought they had discovered over the years that ended up not being true. And the Bitcoin community, as with this documentary, came to the same conclusion. The general feeling when the documentary came out was, one, it was an amazing documentary, and two, that the general consensus was the Bitcoin community disagrees with the conclusion of the documentary, which is A, that we know who Satoshi is at all, or B, the specific individual that the documentary believes they identified. So it's a fantastic documentary, regardless of who Satoshi Nakamoto is. I personally believe we don't know, and we will never know who Satoshi is. And plus, I believe it doesn't matter, because I believe they destroyed all of the Bitcoin that they had access to, or destroyed the private keys, meaning it will never move. None of the Bitcoin that Satoshi Nakamoto mined in the very early days of Bitcoin, none of it has ever moved on the blockchain, other than, I think, one test transaction in the first few days of Bitcoin. So none of it's moved. I don't think it ever will move, and I am absolutely certain that Satoshi destroyed the private keys to remove the temptation for him to ever move that Bitcoin, or eliminate the possibility that it ever could be moved. So even, and so what, even if he had access to that, so what, he would have a lot of Bitcoin like Michael Saylor and others. So anyway, all that to say, I think it's an incredible documentary. Everyone should watch it if you have any interest in Bitcoin at all. Even if you don't, it's just great TV, very well done, high budget. I was super impressed. Highly recommend it. And again, you can draw your own conclusions. Do you think at the end of the documentary that the case they make for who is Satoshi Nakamoto, do you believe that is compelling? Or do you believe we still don't know? Or do you believe, as I do, that, well, hey, maybe it sounds compelling, but the same is true for 5 to 7 other people. So one of them is probably Satoshi, but there's an equally good chance that none of them are Satoshi, which is, we just don't know. But it's a great documentary. So it's out on Max. You can watch it with a Max.com, which is HBO Max. You can watch it with a Max streaming subscription on Amazon, or directly on Max.com. And even if you sign up for a free subscription or only pay for 1 month, it's such a good, well done documentary that it's worth it, even if you do a trial membership or you just sign up for 1 month. And if the only reason you can't watch it is you don't want to pay $10 for 1 month of Max, I'm not sure if they have a free subscription or not. But if the holdup is you don't want to pay $10 and you do want to watch it, just message me and I will send you $10 of Bitcoin so that you can watch it for free. That's my offer. I thought it was so good that I'll personally remove any barriers to entry to anyone who wants to watch it, who just doesn't want to spend $10 because they want to spend that money on Bitcoin instead. I will send you $10 of Bitcoin, and therefore you can watch the documentary for free. If you have to pay for the first month of Max in order to get it. But I think you can get a free subscription and then just unsubscribe. Anyway, fantastic documentary, highly recommend it. And again, the title is Money Electric, the Bitcoin Mystery. So Money Electric, the Bitcoin Mystery. Fantastic and highly recommended. Thanks.